They fired me because I refused to date my boss. 2 years later, I bought the company and fired him in front of everyone. I still remember the exact moment it happened. The cold air of the office, the sterile hum of the fluorescent lights, the pitiful look in HR's eyes as they slid the termination letter across the table. Company downsizing, they said. Restructuring. But we both knew the truth. I was being punished for saying no. It started 3 months earlier. At first, it was subtle, the way Mr. Harding would linger a little too long at my desk, how his compliments started getting a little too personal. "You look stunning today," he whispered once, leaning so close I could smell the cheap cologne soaking his shirt collar. I laughed it off. I needed this job. It was a good company, a stable paycheck, and after struggling for so long, I wasn't about to throw it away because my boss didn't know how to keep things professional. But it got worse. After I politely declined his dinner invitation, just the two of us, somewhere private, the atmosphere shifted overnight. Deadlines got tighter. My workload doubled. Every minor mistake became a serious concern that needed immediate correction. I still believed, stupidly, that if I just worked harder, he'd leave me alone. That was until the Friday he cornered me in the parking lot. He leaned against my car like he owned it, like he owned me, and said, "You know, loyalty could take you far here, very far, but if you're not loyal." He let the words hang in the air, dripping with implication. I didn't even let him finish. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove away shaking. The next Monday, I was called into HR. No warning, no discussion. Just a pink slip and a 1,000-yard stare from the HR director, like she was already mourning my career. I left the building numb. I felt humiliated, betrayed, powerless. For the next few weeks, I spiraled. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My savings were running out, and every rejection email from another job application felt like another slap in the face. But somewhere between the anger and the fear, something inside me hardened. I realized that if I wanted real security, real power, I couldn't just wait for someone else to give it to me. I had to build it myself. I started small. I spent my last few dollars on online courses, business management, finance, leadership. I took freelance jobs, anything I could get to stay afloat. I read business books at the library because I couldn't afford to buy them. I stopped going out, stopped wasting time on anything that didn't move me forward. And slowly, piece by piece, I built something. I created a consulting firm, just me and my laptop at first. I hustled for clients, networked like my life depended on it, and treated every project like it was $1 million contract. Word got around. My client list grew. My income stabilized. And then, for the first time in my life, I had options. Real options. One night, scrolling through industry news, I saw it. My old company was in trouble. Financial trouble. Their investors were pulling out. Profits were sinking. And the entire executive team was scrambling for a bailout. I didn't even hesitate. I reached out to some connections, pulled favors, called in debts. It took months of negotiation and more sleepless nights than I can count. But eventually, it happened. I bought the company. The same company that had thrown me out like trash because I dared to say no. And I knew exactly what I was going to do next. When the deal closed, I insisted on one condition. I wanted to address the entire staff on my first day as owner. The day I walked back into that building, it felt like stepping onto a battlefield where I had already won. The receptionist's jaw dropped when she saw me. Some employees recognized me instantly. Others looked confused, whispering to each other, trying to place my face. I wore a crisp white suit, sharp, powerful, untouchable. I moved through the halls like a ghost resurrected, a reminder that some things you bury come back stronger. They gathered everyone in the main conference room. The atmosphere buzzed with nervous energy. Rumors were flying about new ownership, layoffs, change. No one knew exactly what was coming, except me. And then he walked in, Mr. Harding, still wearing the same smug expression, though now it was tainted with worry. He hadn't even bothered to check who had bought the company. Typical. I stepped up to the front of the room, microphone in hand. The chatter died instantly. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady and loud. "For those of you who don't know me, my name is Evelyn Carter. 2 years ago, I sat in the same building, at that table right there." I pointed directly to the corner of the room, and I was fired under false pretenses. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I caught the flash of panic in Mr. Harding's eyes. Good. I was punished for refusing to compromise my integrity, I continued, each word cutting sharper than the last. "And today, I'm here not just as a former employee," I let the suspense hang, "but as the new owner of this company." The room exploded in gasps and whispers. I smiled, the kind of slow, dangerous smile that says, "You're not dreaming. This is real." "And effective immediately," I said, turning directly to Mr. Harding. "There will be changes." He tried to mask his fear, tried to act composed, but his hands twitched slightly at his sides. "Mr. Harding," I said, savoring every syllable, "you're fired." Dead silence. He opened his mouth like he was going to protest, but no words came out. His face flushed beet red. For a moment, he looked like a man drowning on dry land. "You can collect your belongings and leave the premises within the hour," I added. "Security will escort you." I nodded toward 2 guards standing at the back of the room. They stepped forward without hesitation. Mr. Harding stammered, You can't. This is a mistake." "No," I said sharply, cutting him off. "The mistake was thinking you could abuse your power without consequences." He stood there frozen for a few more seconds, then turned and stumbled out of the room, followed by security. The employees watched in stunned silence, some barely concealing their satisfaction. I turned back to the room. "Mr. Harding," I said, savoring every syllable, "you're fired." Dead silence. He opened his mouth like he was going to protest, but no words came out. His face flushed beet red. For a moment, he looked like a man drowning on dry land. "You can collect your belongings and leave the premises within the hour," I added. "Security will escort you." I nodded toward 2 guards standing at the back of the room. They stepped forward without hesitation. Mr. Harding stammered, You can't. This is a mistake." "No," I said sharply, cutting him off. "A mistake was thinking you could abuse your power without consequences." He stood there frozen for a few more seconds, then turned and stumbled out of the room, followed by security. The employees watched in stunned silence, some barely concealing their satisfaction. I turned back to the room. "For everyone else," I said, "real change starts today. This company will be rebuilt with respect, dignity, and integrity. Those who share that vision are welcome to stay. Those who don't," I shrugged. "You know where the door is." I left them with that. As I walked back down the hall, past the same desks where I had once cried in silence, past the same walls that had heard my humiliation, I felt something lift from my chest. It wasn't just revenge. It wasn't just justice. It was reclaiming my power. And I was just getting started. The weeks after Harding's firing were a whirlwind. The first thing I did was meet individually with every department head. I wanted to hear the truth. Unfiltered, no fear of retaliation. What I discovered was worse than I imagined. Toxic management, ignored complaints, burned out employees who had been hanging on by a thread. It wasn't just Harding. It was a culture that had rotted from the inside out. So I tore it down. I restructured leadership, promoted people who had been overlooked for years, brought in fresh talent where needed. I implemented open-door policies, anonymous reporting systems, mental health support, raises for the ones who deserve them, clear expectations, and fair treatment for everyone else. At first, there was resistance. Change always brings fear, but slowly, almost like a garden growing after a storm, things began to shift. People started smiling again. You could feel the difference walking through the halls. Less dread, more energy. Employees who had been quietly searching for other jobs started staying. Clients noticed too. Revenue stabilized, then grew. And me? I finally felt what true power was. Not power over others, but power over my own life, over my choices, over my future. 2 years earlier, I'd been crying in my car, feeling like the world had ended. Now, I was signing multi-million-dollar contracts, giving speeches at industry conferences, mentoring young women who reminded me so much of myself. One afternoon, I stood by the huge glass window in my new corner office, the one that used to belong to Harding. The sun was setting, casting long golden streaks across the city skyline. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Marissa, one of the receptionists who had been there when I was fired. She stepped inside, a little shy. I wanted to say thank you, she said, voice trembling. You don't know what it means, what you've done here. I smiled, a real smile. Not the fake one I used to force to survive. You deserve to work in a place where you're respected, I said simply. She nodded, tears shining in her eyes, then hurried out before they could fall. I sat back down at my desk, heart full. Not because I had destroyed Harding, though I won't lie, that part had been delicious, but because I had built something better in its place. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my best friend. Dinner tonight? You've earned a real celebration. I laughed and grabbed my coat. As I stepped out into the evening air, I realized something. The best revenge isn't just showing up your enemies. It's living so well, they become irrelevant. And that's exactly what I plan to keep doing. Every damn day.